Okay, everybody, it is time for the final step. So the final step is we've looked at PHP-myadmin, we've looked at SQL, reviewed some basic commands. We can now create and host our databases on our servers, whether it's XAMPP or CSUNIX. The final step is we want our PHP programs to be able to respond to user input by firing off database commands. Okay, so this is the final step. Now, I'm going to just give you a demonstration of how to connect and how to issue database commands for insert, update, and delete. We're going to leave select for now, because when you're selecting from a database, that's when you're getting information from the database and then maybe displaying it on a web page for the user. That's a step more complicated. So we're going to end this week just with making changes to a table, inserting, updating, deleting. And next week we will look at selecting and displaying information. Okay, so if we take a look at what's in Module 2 here, we're just going to go get the code. So I'm gonna get the code for Module 2. And it's got a few things that we're going to use. I'm going to open it up here, Module 2 code. Did I include the template? Yeah, it's got the templates that we need, and there's some data that we need here as well. So what I'm going to do is, I go back here, copy this folder over to my desktop so that I can access it. Okay, here it is. The first thing that I need is actually in the data folder. There's a database called grades.sql. Now, if you're following me along at home, you don't necessarily have to use this file. We created a student table of data, and it might be a good idea for you to use your own student table. Then you'll have to think about what I'm doing and how to change it to make it work on your computer. If you're not following along and you're just watching, then you don't have to do anything. But I'm going to import grades.sql into my XAMPP database. So let me just check. I think I've got XAMPP running here already. There it is. Yeah, I'm already running with MySQL and Apache running. So I'm going to go to localhost /phpMyadmin. And there we are. Here's my database that I created before, Scott. It's got my one table in it. I'm not going to use this table though. I'm going to import, if I go into desktop, here it is in the data folder that I just downloaded, grades.sql, and hopefully it'll work. Go. There we go. So I've got a new table called grades, and here we are. So I've got first name, last name. It's basically the same table, just under a different name. So if you didn't go through the exercise from the last couple of videos, you could import the grades table here into your system and use it, or you can use the students table that you created before. So but I'm going to use this grades table, which has basically the same structure as the students one. The other thing I'm going to need is over here is the template, PHP template. So the goal here is to create a file, a PHP file that when loaded through a server will be able to access a database on that same server and make changes to a database table within that database. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over to htdocs. Where are we? What happened to my htdocs folder? Okay, I'm going to have to go to Windows. I think it's because I reinstalled XAMPP. I installed a new version so that I was up to date and using the same version as most of the rest of you. So I'm going to pull this over here so I have a quick link to it. Here's my htdocs. I'm going to create a new folder. I will call this folder basic PDO. You can call yours whatever you want. And then I'm going to paste template.php in there. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with an insert. So I'm going to create a PHP file. I'm calling it insert.php. The purpose of this file is going to be simply to insert a row into the table over here. So let's just make sure it's working. Localhost / I think it was basic PDO. Here it is, and here's my insert and view page source. So this is just the template. So the source just looks like that. Then I'm going to open it up in VS Code. Okay, here we go. We're ready to go. Now, there are a few steps which are outlined in the guide that you have to follow to issue an SQL query. The very first step is that you have to establish a connection to the database, and you create a database handler object. Now, a word of warning here. I'm still pointing you to MySQL stuff here. This is inside the PHP tutorial. Sorry, I'm pointing you to W3 Schools stuff. This is inside the PHP tutorial. There's a subheading called MySQL Database that gives you a bunch of info on what to do. There are a number of ways to interact with a MySQL database from PHP. PHP is an old language, and it wears its age on its sleeve because it hasn't removed anything. So there are a bunch of functions out there that are global functions called MySQL functions. That was found to be quite insecure, so they improved them and created a set of functions called MySQLi functions, which you'll see people using out in the wild. If you go on to Stack Overflow and other places, you'll see examples of that. But when the version 5 came and they updated to an object-oriented framework, they included object-oriented programming, they created a new system called PHP Data Objects, or PDO. This is the latest and best way of accessing a database, and it is the way that you are expected to do it in this course, okay? So you have to use these materials, and you have to use my way of doing it. This is the best way of doing it. If you're getting help online and finding MySQLi stuff, and I see that in your code, I'm going to ask you to, on a good day, I'm going to ask you to do it again. On a bad day, I'm going to penalize you marks for it. So make sure that we're in a domain, web development, where there are lots of ways to do things that have evolved over time, and we're always going to be trying to do things the best and latest way. So when we get parameters, we use filter input functions, and when we go to a database, we use PDO objects. And any other way of doing it is not acceptable in this course. Okay, so keep that in mind. So first thing we have to do is establish a connection. We create a database handler object. So notice the new keyword here. I'm calling the constructor for a class called PDO, and I give it some information about how to connect. And I can put it inside of a try-catch block. It throws exceptions, and I can use the get message method of the exception object that I receive if something went wrong. This arrow here is kind of new. That's how because remember the dot operator is already in use. It's being used for concatenation. So we couldn't also use it the way most object-oriented languages use it. If this was a Java, it would be e.getMessage. But we don't have the dot, so we use the C++ arrow, which is C++ actually supports dot and arrow for different things. But we use the arrow operator to get methods and fields and instance variables from objects. So that's what's happening here. But this is just boilerplate code. So I think I can actually just copy right from the PDF here into my file. I'm not sure if you guys will be able to do that. It depends on what version. I'm going to go Alt-Shift-F. There we go. Paste it in Alt-Shift-F. I think that's going to be okay. I hope. Sometimes I end up pasting bad characters when I do this. So if that happens, we'll see. So this is the connection information here. It goes into the constructor for the PDO object. This you will never have to change, this part. MySQL host equals localhost. You might be tempted to change that to CSUNIX when you're on the CSUNIX machine, but if this code is running on CSUNIX, localhost is CSUNIX while you're running on. So localhost is whatever machine you're on. So you should never have to change this. The database name you do have to change. So I'm going to change mine to Scott. You'll have to change yours to your student number to connect to the database. So hopefully you followed my advice and created in XAMPP a database with your student number. And then you need to log in. Now this is what you're going to have to change when you're uploading. But when we are in the context of XAMPP, let me just find the... So there's a supplement. There's the guide for this module, and then there's also this 1B, oops, not that one. There's also this 1B supplement here. when you're logging into to XAMPP, your MySQL user ID is root and your password is the empty string. So that's what we're putting right here. We are logging in. We're having PDF log in on our behalf. So I'm going to go root and empty string. That's my login info. When we upload to CSUNIX, we'll have to change this to be our correct login info. If we can't connect, it's going to tell us. Otherwise, I'm going to echo, or maybe I'll put it even in here. Echo P, it worked. So the way try-catch blocks work is that as long as this line doesn't throw an exception, we will execute this line. Otherwise, we're going to execute this line. This line is essentially an echo, but it's got a die here. It's a bit sloppy, but die will just terminate the PHP process right at this point, and will print out this error message. If you get to here, something really bad happened, so we don't sort of, we're not going to worry too much about making a pretty output for the user. We probably should do that, but for this course we're not going to worry about it. So die terminates the script right here, which means we won't even see /body and /html. So we won't actually have correct HTML. But before it dies, it dumps this string, whatever I put here, into the output. So let's see if it works. It'll be a bit of a miracle if it works the first time. But let's go over here and reload. What do you know? Miracles do happen. It worked. And if I reload over here, you'll see I just get P, it worked here. Now what would it look like if it failed? So let's go back to here. I'm going to put in a bad password. So I'm going to put in a fake password here and reload. And then I get error, couldn't connect, SQL state, access denied for user root, using password yes. So it doesn't show me the password I was using, but it says, yeah, you were trying to access this user using a password and it failed. Over here, like I said, it's not very pretty HTML. Notice how the script died here, so we don't get the /body and we don't get the /HTML. You could put that stuff in if that worried you. So if you wanted to die early, die young, but leave a good looking corpse, you can go put the tags in right here, /p, /body, /HTML, like that. That's much nicer. Now when you reload, if that error happens, it echoes it in a p tag and it closes the body and the HTML tag for you. You won't see much of a difference here, but you'll know that your output was correct, even in the error. Okay, so that's one way something could go wrong, or if I mistype, or what you guys are going to see is you're going to have errors when you go to upload. You're going to forget to change your user ID. So let's say I try with a wrong user ID. It's going to say access denied for user root 2. So that's where you're going to have to figure out, is that a correct, and using password no, because I left the password blank. Okay, where are we? Oh yeah, over here. So I'm going to change that back, save that, reload over here. All good, everything's working. So this means that I am successfully connecting to my database. That's step one. Let's go take a look at the guide again. Alrighty, step two, we're going to execute a statement, and what I want to execute is an insert statement. So this is how to do it. You have a command that you create, and then you prepare the statement, and then you execute the statement. So I'll type this from scratch. Maybe I'll hit some errors, which is always good when you guys see me make mistakes, because then we can talk about what went wrong and so on. I don't do it on purpose, but unless I'm telling you I'm doing it on purpose. But sometimes happy accidents are good. So I'm going to say insert into grades, which is the name of my table. And now here's where what you can do here is actually, this is a good idea, is go into your localhost XAMPP, PHPMyAdmin, and just try and work out the command here. Insert into grades. It's going to be first name and last name. So there they are. You can see the columns over there. First name, last name. And if it should be set up so I only need that, and the rest will have default values. Values, Jane, should be single quotes really. Jane Doe. If you use double quotes, it can mess you up because you're going to put this string eventually inside a double quoted string in PHP. So better to use single quotes here. Let's see if this works. So it did work. which means I got it right. So I'm going to copy this. This is the command it's repeating that I entered. If I got it wrong, I would tweak it until it was right. And now I can be sure it's right. The reason why I'm doing it this way is that debugging is a bit tricky in PHP and web development. So it's good to know that that was the correct query. And I can just paste it in here. Okay, so that's my command. And let me just go to browse here. There we go, Jane Doe got entered. Okay, let me change it to John Doe so that we can see a different line when it gets entered. So that's the first step, is I create a command string, and I'm going to send this command string to MySQL using the connection that I created here, this connection object, $dbh, which stands for database handler. You can call this whatever you want, but dbh is standard. And then I'm going to prepare it. And when I prepare it, it's going to create an object of type PDO statement. So I say statement equals $dbh, and then I have to call a method of dbh, which I use with the arrow. So dbh is an object. I'm going to say prepare the command string. So I could have put this string directly in here, but it's a bit nicer to break it out like this. So I'm going to this won't do anything yet. Prepare, what it does is it compiles this, pre-compiles it to make sure, and then you can execute the statement over and over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and reload. I don't see any errors, so it seems to have worked. You won't see any changes to your database table over here. When you hit browse, it's still the same. All I did was prepare the statement. Now I'm going to execute it. And when I execute it, it's going to give me a result. So I execute the statement like this, and I call the execute method on that statement. And then I can say if $result equals true, echo statement, record inserted, else echo something went wrong. And I think I missed the /p over here. So let's try it. So what did I do here? I created a command. I connected and created the DBH object, the database handler object, the PDO object. Then I created a command string, and I called the prepare method of the PDO object, gave it the command string, and created a statement object. And then I ran the execute statement of the execute method of the statement object. It's going to return a result, true or false, and then I check that to see if it worked. Okay, so let's run it and see what happens. So it says it worked. Record inserted. Let's go over here and hit browse again, and what do you know? There it is, John Doe, inserted with a new student ID. Pretty cool. If I run this again, it's just going to insert it again. So if I hit browse now, you'll see another John Doe has been inserted. So this is of limited use. It's going to insert the same user over and over and over again. The other thing that you can do is, which is nice, record inserted, you can say with ID equal to, and then you can use, I'm going to concatenate this in. I'm going to have to look up the syntax because this is one of those things I tend to forget. So I've used similar things here. Now I've done things slightly different here in the example, and I'll show you what I did in a second. But I wanted to show you this. The statement object has a row count method on it to tell you how many things were inserted. And there's also, I believe there should be a last insert ID as well. So I can do equals, I think it's dbh last insert ID. I guess this one's not in the, so I can say echo, I can also say dot, so I'm concatenating here, dollar statement, row count is another method, rows affected. So Alt-Shift-F. So when you're inserting, you can get the ID of the thing you just inserted if you didn't specify it, and you can also get this row count from the statement that will tell you how many rows were affected. There you go. So record inserted with ID equals 9. If I reload, ID equals 10, ID equals 11, one row affected each time. And when I browse over here, I've got a whole bunch of John Does in my database with different IDs. So that's pretty cool. Now, normally we're not hard coding these values. Normally we might even be getting values from the user. So let's say that we are gonna retrieve some values from the user, and let's say they were dollar first name equals Drix and semicolon, and dollar last name equals Vandry. Okay, there we go. It's a fictional character. So normally I might have a user filling in a form to insert a user, and I would then send the form parameters to here, receive those parameters using filter input, make sure that everything was okay. But I'm ignoring all those details here. I'm just saying, let's suppose that we've gotten information that we want inserted and it's stored in these variables. What we basically want to do is put this information here. And you might be tempted to do this, dollar first name, dollar last name. Don't type this. Will that work? Yes. Should you do it? No, do not do this. Don't do this. Okay. Now remember, in a real system, these first name and last name will have come from the user. And what we're basically doing here is we're creating some code that we're going to execute on our server, and we're letting the user send us some information, and then we're just sticking that information into our code. We're going to talk about this later, but we're opening ourselves up here to something called an SQL injection attack. So a clever user can embed SQL commands into here and take control of our database and do stuff to our database. So never directly concatenate information that the user has given you into a query string. When you want to add information that came from the user, you use question marks. So we prepare the statement, and we use prepared statement parameters. So that's the other thing that preparing a statement does. Where I put question marks, it leaves blanks. It's like it creates a little function that it's going to run, and it leaves blanks in that, but it's been compiled. So it's now kind of safe. Whatever the user types, after it's been compiled, I can fill in that information there, and it won't be like I'm filling in SQL code. It's a little bit hard to explain that distinction, but it means that there's another step. So this command can still be prepared, but it can't be executed yet because I need to create some parameters. And I'm going to create an array of those parameters called first name and last name. This isn't the only way to do this, by the way. There are other ways to create open slots to fill in later. This is just the easiest way right now for us. So if you find a different way to do this, it's fine. But we're always going to use prepared statements with parameters. So I've created an array with first name and last name, and I'm going to give that array to the execute method. Like that. Okay? You can do this all in fewer steps without the intermediate variables if you want, but I'm just breaking things out so you can see it all happen. So this should hopefully insert Drix Vandry into the database, and it's going to do it in a way that's safe. So if the user has injected SQL code into here, it's just going to treat it as data rather than treating it as code, which is what it would do if I put it here. We'll talk a lot more about that later. For now, you should just know that you shouldn't do it. So I'm going to reload. It says record inserted with ID 12, so it worked on, I'm getting lucky here, it worked on the first try, and there it is, Drix Vandry. So what can go wrong here? Maybe I forget to send my parameters to the execute statement. What would that look like? Something went wrong, so it returns back a false. Notice it's not giving me very much information. There isn't much information to be had on what went wrong here. So what I often do is I echo the command string here so that I can look at it and see if there was something obviously wrong in the command string. I look at that and I go, no, that looks right. So that's one way something can go wrong, is if you is if you forget to send your parameters, or you send too many or too few. There we go. Other things that can go wrong, like a syntax error, you know, on your in your command, that could go wrong too. So that's something went wrong, and then you can check this and see what went wrong. There's a lot of things that can go wrong that will just kind of fail silently, but this is working again. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So if you followed me along, that's great. I will post this later. But what I want to do now is actually I have a couple of pre-baked examples that go with this that do more than what I've shown you here. So here I'm showing you the basics. You connect to the database, you create the command string, you prepare the statement, you execute the statement with any parameters if necessary, and then you check the result and see what happened. So over here, not here, the module 2 guide, we connected, we prepared the statement like this with question marks. We executed the statement. Notice I chose to name things slightly different here, STMT. You can use these abbreviations if you want because everybody knows what they mean. DBH, STMT, $CMD. I called mine parameters. You could just call it params, or you can embed it directly in here. You can just put this expression directly in here. And then you check whether it worked. I called my variable result. You can call it success. And you can put everything inside try-catch blocks if you want, maybe for better error handling. Okay. Oh yeah, there's a little note here. Statement execute will always return true if the query was okay, even if it didn't do anything. So for example, here's an example where you're deleting. This will not delete anything because 0 is false, so the where clause will always be false, so it won't delete any rows, but it will say success, like I successfully got through the query and I did what you wanted me to do. That's why we do things like statement row count, just to double check that something actually, in this case, got deleted. So if you're using a delete or an update query, it's the same as insert. You just change the syntax here, put the question marks where they need to be, and then execute it. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is getting data from a form. So I want to remind you that when we send data through a form, we access it using filter input, and we should always be using input post for this. For insert, update, and delete, you should use post. You don't generally want the user to be able to bookmark and repeat your operations. So input post hides the parameters, the data that's being sent. And you should always use the right filters and so on. You should always check them. And then once you've done all that, here's an update example. Set final exam equals something, where first name equals something, the name and the exam you got from the user, and you put them in there. Okay, so all this stuff is important. Using filter input is important. Using PDO is important. Using the question marks are important. It's the best way of doing things, and it makes you safe as you can be. It makes you safer from malicious users, which we always have to worry about. But the code that I wanted to show you is over in desktop, so you can get this code yourself. For this, if you want to run this code, you will have to import the grades database. But here's the basic code. I'm going to copy that folder and put it over in the htdocs here. So this is basic_PDO. Let's go look at the code for right now. So we have let's use the insert example here. So what we can do now is, if we go to, what did I call it? Basic, so it's basic_PDO. Here we are. And I've got an insert example here, but using a form. So if I hit insert, I can enter a first name, John, why John? I don't know, Sally, Salarama, I don't know. And this is a date field. I use type equals date here, so I can pick a date. So there we go. I picked September 24th, and I can submit this form when 1 rows were affected by your query. So let's go have a look down here. If I browse over here, it created Sally Salarama with a different start date from everybody else, June 24th. So let's take a look at the code that made this work. Insert.html, if I open that with code. So 2 text fields, and I mark them required. I put placeholders in them. There's a little bit of style there to make it look, half decent. And then I have type equals date here. When you have type equals date, here, we should take a look here. If I go I just hit F12 there. There we go. So hitting F12 opens up for me, or Control-Shift-I opens up this window. If I reload, I can see the form data that was sent. So this is the first name, last name, and the start. This is what was sent from the HTML form when I chose date. And the nice thing is that it uses the same date format as SQL, so I can just insert that value that was sent from the date form into the database. So this is the form. That's what it sent. So this is the form here. And when I submit it, like I said, here you go. You can see, because it's post, you don't see the parameters up here. You see them here. Then the file that received them was insert.php. And insert.php does a couple of things a little bit differently. The first is, and I highly recommend this, it uses an include statement to basically, this pastes in code from a different script, from connect.php. Connect.php is over here. This is where I have included all the connection code. You'll notice there's no HTML in here. I just created a file with an open PHP tag, and then the whole file can just be PHP. I don't even have to put a closing tag. Like, I don't have to do that. And this piece of code here, which you can copy and paste and steal for your own code if you want, contains my connection string. So you would have to change this to be your database. There's my user ID and my password. So that's pretty nice. And then I can just reuse this. I don't have to retype it. I just include it like that. So it runs the connection script. Then it receives the values using filter sanitize string from each of these. And then I check the parameters. I check to see if they are null. I am also checking for blank first name and last name here, and to make sure that they're not null. If they're null, they weren't sent. So if I just go up here and hit enter, it's going to say something was wrong with your parameters, because at this time I just entered a query directly for insert.php. No parameters were sent. And so if the parameters are not okay, then it'll tell me so. So I check the parameters to make sure they're okay in this if statement. If they are all okay, so if they're not equal to null and not equal to empty, then I set params okay to true, and here's my insert statement, first name, last name, start, with 3 values. I prepare the command, I set the parameters to be the correct things, and I execute the statement. I did not actually check here. Oh no, I did. I checked later. So by the time I get through here, I have params okay and success. This is all happening in the top of the program. And then down here in the body, if the params were not okay, that's where I echo something went wrong. If they were okay, I make sure that it worked, and I say win, otherwise I say fail, and I say how many rows were affected by the query. Okay, so that's the insert using a form. There's also an update here as well, an update example. So in this pre-baked code, if you go to update.html, first name, let's change all the Sallys. So this is not the best way to do it, by the way. You should really use the user ID. But I'm going to say anybody with a first name of Sally got 100, because I really like people named Sally. I love that name. So when I submit, it says when 3 rows were affected by your query. It sent Sally and 100. And if we go over here, there should be a number of Sallys here, because I executed this a few times. There should be 3 Sallys, and they all have an exam query set to 100, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool that all this stuff is happening automatically and our database is getting updated. If you take a look at I'll let you look at update.html on your own. Update.php, though, again, it uses the same connect file. It gets the parameters. Notice I use filter validate int here for an integer. I'm expecting an integer. If I was expecting a double or a float, it could be filter validate float if I wanted it to be a float, but I was expecting an integer. And same thing, I just set params okay to false, and then I check if they're okay. Notice I check if exam is false, because if the user sent something that was not an integer as a parameter, this would flag it. And then I've got an update command, set final exam equal question mark, where first name equals question mark. I prepare and execute it, and then down here, this code isn't really different. This is the same code as the other one. Okay, and by the way, these files look the way they do because they are all linking to a basic examples.css style sheet. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So that's how you do it. I'm not showing you an example of delete. I'm going to ask you to do that on your own. So if we go into the exercises for part 3, I want you to try all these. So try them all. Maybe even start with number 2 for the delete one. There's one for each of them, 1, 2, 3. And I would like you also to walk through uploading your solutions. So when you do that, you're going to have to change the information, your connection information. So what you have to do is you have to export the DB from XAMPP and import it. It says the DB, it should say the table, and import it to CSUNIX. Then upload all your files, and then if you've got a connect.php file, like I do, and you're including it, modify that to log into the CSUNIX instance of MySQL. So I'm going to leave you guys there. Actually, what I'm going to do is, now that I think of it, for those of you that want to see me do that, I'm going to walk through it right now. You can stop the video now and come back later if you want, or you can watch me walk through it now. So in the last few minutes, I'm going to do that. Okay, so I've got my code here, all my basic PDO code. Here it is, basic PDO underscore PDO. And I want to put it on my website, on my CSUNIX website. I have to do a couple of things. I have to upload the grades database. You may already have yours uploaded, but so I'm going to go to https://csunix.mohawk college. Here it is right here, /phpMyAdmin. I think I may, no, I have to log in. So it's, yep, I think I've saved my password, so I can just go. Here I am, I'm logged in. First thing I need to do is import my table. I should be able to just import the grades table. We'll see what happens when I do it. Here it is, grades.sql, open, go. Is it going to work? I think I've already sanitized this one. Nope. It's got the default char set equals Latin 1. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to change that. And what I'll do is, if I think of it, I'll change it online. But you guys might need to change it yourselves. Where did I upload that from? Wait. Import, choose file. It's on the desktop. Can I edit this? Oh yeah, I can. I'm going to open it right here. What I need to do is delete this. So this worked fine last time I taught this course, but apparently CSUNIX does not like it anymore. So I'm going to fix that. And then I'm going to say open and go, and I should be able to get grades. Oh, grades already exists. That's my problem. So I had grades in there before from a different iteration of the course. So let's drop it and then import. Go. There we go. So grades is there now with these users in it. Now I want to upload the code. So for that, I'm going to go WinSCP like that. Log in. I just had to resist the urge to say my password out loud there. I almost told you my password. I'm going to go into public HTML, and I'm going to create a folder in here, new directory. I'm just going to call it, example. So here we go. I got a new folder called example, and I'm going to put all this code there, like this. All right, now in CSUNIX, I can go to https://csunix. I have to go to tilde my user ID, and I think example was what I called the folder. There it is. Let's try and insert. Spoiler alert, it's not going to work. Here we go. How about Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit? Give it whatever date. Hit submit. Oh no, couldn't connect. Access denied for user root, using password no. Why is that happening? Because when I uploaded the code, I didn't change my connection string for CSUNIX. So it's trying to, localhost here now is CSUNIX, and it's trying to connect using root with no password. So I need to change that, and I can change it right here. If I just double click in WinSCP, I can actually modify the code. Probably Notepad will open for you. I've linked mine to Notepad++. So I can modify the code. So the user ID should be Scott, and the password should be whatever my password is, which I'm not going to tell you. So you would fix that there, and then you would save the file. So just Control S saves it, and should auto upload it. You might have to click through and say yes here. Notice it will still not work, but now it's saying it's not working using Scott and a password because I put the password wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go over to a different file and get my connect from here. Okay, I think I can just copy and paste it over into here. Paste. And I'm not going to look at it because it'll show you my password. But when I reload now, oh, still doesn't work. Okay, I fixed it now, and while I was fixing it, I saw what happened. I pasted the whole basic PDO folder in here. I thought I was pasting the connect file. So what I just did was I opened up connect and I put in my correct password, and it should work now. There we go. When one query, if one row affected, if I reload here, well, it's taking a second to load. There we go. There's Bilbo Baggins. And I can also, I should be able to use the other script as well. Update.php, first name Bilbo, new exam grade 999, submit. If I go back over here and hit browse, Bilbo's final exam is now 999. Okay, so that's the process of uploading. Bit of a slog. That's why there's fewer videos this week. I would like you to try those exercises, and I'll see you in class on Friday or Monday, depending on which section you're in. Okay, see you then.